is our second speaker here that's also a representative of Asian American women. We're bringing her on specifically because she is also an inspiring writer, just pretty much following the same footsteps as we just had right here, Amy, right? So, but you weren't always a writer, right? You knew that you wanted to be a writer very early on in your childhood. And we have some photos here. What are we looking at right here for you?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Alexis. Like Francis mentioned, I'm currently a full-time storyteller is how I like to describe myself. On the one hand, I am pursuing traditional novel writing, and then on the other hand, something a little bit more modern, which is content creation. But yeah, like Francis said, I wasn't always in this space. Actually, for the last few years, I was in a totally different career. So I was working in HR, but I actually think the seeds of writing were planted much earlier on. So when I was a little girl, I have a picture up here. When I was younger, I really loved my reading and my writing classes. So this is an example of a book that I wrote back then, and it's a little bit more of a PG sample. So I also found some poems that I wrote back in the day, and it's funny because I throw out these big words like rape and murder, but I actually don't think I knew what those words meant as a little kid. I think I just liked the shock factor for my teachers. So yeah, and then in college I was sort of grappling between majors, and I did one editorial internship after my freshman year, and I worked for a company called Stage Buddy, and I was basically sent to off-Broadway shows and stand-up comedies in New York, which is where I'm from, and I basically would write reviews for them. And this internship was really cool because they kind of gave me the VIP treatment. I would, they would put my name on the seats, and like, usually it was kind of dingy studios, but I still felt very cool, and as this young kid, having a fun experience. But it was from that internship that I realized, maybe this is not the route for me. It was a little bit riskier, right? And so, just like most young Asian Americans, I kind of aspired for something a little bit safer. And so if you can cut to the next slide. So my first job out of college was at a media company called Vice, and I was a bottom of the barrel HR assistant, but it was kind of the first time in my life I felt secure, right? I had finally landed a full-time job, which is kind of all you want when you're at that age. But I also realized that I was missing something, and that was a creative outlet, right? Everybody needs a creative outlet. And so I returned to something that I loved to do when I was a little girl, which is to write. And I had this idea for like a kooky book, a story, and so I decided to work on that on the side. And it was the first time in my life I really did something for myself, by myself, not because a teacher or a parent was telling me to do it, but really because it was just fulfilling for me. But the thing about working at a media company like Vice, you're surrounded by editors and journalists and correspondents, people who are paid and trained to do these things. I had coworkers who were going to Afghanistan to interview the Taliban, and so I definitely felt a little bit of that imposter syndrome, but I decided to just keep working on it. And it was also around this time at Vice that a coworker of mine named Mary H.K. Choi published her first novel, which is called Emergency Contact. And that's the image that I have up here. I remember when she published her book, the company sent out an email to the employees basically saying, the first X number of people to RSVP will get a free copy of the book. And I remember I RSVP'd very last minute, and I was the last person on the list. But I was sitting in the audience, and I was holding this book, and I was so inspired by her because she was Asian, right, Korean like me, although she did grow up in Hong Kong. She was female, she was young, she was a coworker, and it just felt very possible and very inspiring. And so that was really a big driver for me to keep working on my book for the next couple of years.
So when I got a chance to meet you about a year ago, you were right in that transition between going from HR into discovering your love of writing, right? Mm-hmm. And you also, something very interesting in what Amy said earlier in her interview was that a lot of, especially Asian cultures, judge success by what is thought of others, as opposed to what you actually want yourself, right? And this is you going from knowing what you loved as a child, writing, to going to what you thought would be secure, and not liking that, and all of a sudden being re-energized and inspired to go back to what you love because you saw other people doing it, right? Mm-hmm. So when we saw you, you were in that transition, and you now are starting to write your own book, right?
Yep.
So let's have a look at that.
Yep, so over the next couple of years, I would be working on this book called Love Child, and I put a mock cover up on the side over there. It's not published yet, but I've been working on it for a couple of years outside of my full-time career in HR, and basically it's about a Japanese artificial intelligence doll named Aiko, and in Japanese, Aiko means love child, hence the title of the book. And the story kind of follows her and her friends through this, sort of futuristic dystopian society. But I had worked on it for a couple of years until I finally felt like I needed to get some outside eyes on this thing, because I've been working on it for so long by myself. I didn't know if it made sense. I wasn't sure if it just sounded like mumbo jumbo. So I finally started to take some classes with the Gotham Writers Workshop in New York. And I took 3 courses in 2022, and it was the first time I really got some external feedback, and I also reviewed other people's writing. However, it was on the tail end of COVID, and all the classes were remote, and so I realized that what I was really missing was that sense of community. The other cool thing that I did with Gotham Writers Workshop was they have these annual fiction conferences where if you have a decent draft of a book, you can basically pitch to agents directly. And so I applied, and I was on a 4-hour Zoom call with 7 other candidates, 2 agents, and we all got to read the first 2 pages of our book, and I got some really great feedback, which was, the plot itself is great. The first 2 pages sounding a little bit world-buildy, they need to be in the middle, whereas the first 2 pages really need to pop and grab the reader's attention. So I really appreciated that feedback, and I also feel that when I did the conference, I knew that my book was not ready for publishing, but I kind of had adopted this mentality of I'm just going to shoot my shot anyways. I'm just going to try, get that practice, and see what happens. And then a couple of months later, I did something else that I had never done before, which was the Miss Asian Global pageant. Again, never did a pageant, but I was just going to shoot my shot anyways. And it was a really cool experience. I think the biggest thing that I got out of that was for the 10 weeks training leading up to pageant night, I was, we all had to sort of practice our interviews and our Q&A, and we all had crafted stories about who we are in our lives. And my whole spiel was, I've been working in HR, but my real dream, my long-term dream is actually to publish a novel one day, be a writer. And after saying it 100 times, I realized, oh, this is really important to me. And so with that, I sort of gained the confidence and the courage to decide to apply to grad school programs. I just submitted my last applications, and hopefully we'll get in and started a program in New York in the fall. And a big thanks, to you, Francis, for helping me get on that path. Thank you.
Of course. And not only that, the project, you're also working on another project here over here.
Yep. So yes, another recent new project. So like I mentioned, I've been pursuing storytelling, both the traditional route and then more of a modern take, which is content creation. So I have been posting audiobooks to YouTube and Spotify under Luna's Bedtime Stories, which is inspired by my black cat Luna. So some of them are bedtime stories, some of them are guided meditation videos, and I'm basically using artificial intelligence tools to create these videos very quickly, very efficiently. So I use ChatGPT for the scripting, I use Midjourney for the imaging, and then I use 11 Labs for the narration. So it's been really cool to explore that space and the technologies that come with it.
Now, one thing about you that I've noticed is that you were on this journey of self-discovery, right? Self-reflection and who you truly are. And you and I had a lot of deep discussions about that, about basically who you are as a person and how you find that. Right down to the point when we started dissecting and looking at the different cultural origins of this, right? So I'm looking here at the next, what exactly are we looking at? Because you were able to pull from both Western and Eastern here, right?
So I pulled up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I think most people in the audience will be familiar with. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a chart of needs that we as people have. And sort of when you complete all your needs, they say that at the tippy top of that, people will aspire for self-actualization. And so self-actualization is not an end point, but it is a gradual process of becoming, of sort of working consistently towards the things that fulfill you and maximizing your potential. Everyone's self-actualization looks different. So one person's might be a doctor, another person's might be a mother. I think the Japanese concept ikigai really captures the essence of self-actualization really well. So ikigai is where what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at meet, right? So that's really the peak of maximizing your full potential and really loving what you do every day. But it's kind of upsetting because they say only about 2% of people will reach self-actualization, and so it's crazy to think that most of us are just walking around not living up to our full potential, or maybe we're working really hard, but it's towards something that actually doesn't really mean anything to us.
Right, and before you even know what you want to do, you actually have to basically explore and figure out what it is. So you and I discussed, first of all, this whole concept of self-actualization, which is what you were on this journey and you got to the point where you're right now. But there is something else we discovered, which I thought was very interesting, is that there's actually two pyramids.
Yes.
There's a Western and an Eastern pyramid. Most of us here are in the Eastern pyramid without even knowing that we're in the Eastern pyramid. The Western pyramid is what we see here because this is what's taught in schools. But the Eastern pyramid is... Sydney? This is the Eastern pyramid versus the West. This is what they don't teach us in school, which they should be teaching us. You Asians should be looking at this because that's what you guys are actually experiencing. Can you tell us what's actually going on here?
Yeah, so we realized that the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is actually more westernized, maybe a more American ideology, whereas a lot of Asian cultures or households it might not apply to or be relevant. So I found this chart which they say kind of depicts the Asian mentality a little bit more. So the bottom two needs are still the same. Everyone wants a home, shelter, job, but the belonging, esteem, and self-actualization change to affiliation, admiration, and status.
Yeah.
And so what that means is, it's a very externally focused need, right? It's looking to the outside for that gratification or for that validation. And as we all know, it can be a very, a black hole of infinite, needs. So I really encourage everyone to think about where they are on these charts, whether it's the Western or the Eastern, and, consider how they can strive to move towards self-actualization at some point in their life. I will say, if you are sort of stuck in safety, if you need to pay your bills and things like that, kind of like with me in college, I really just wanted, money at that point as a young kid. But after a couple of years, when I got to a place where I was secure enough, I felt the courage to make that leap. And so really think about where you are, but be honest with yourself about what your priorities are.
Yeah, and I think this explains why a lot of Asian or people in Asian cultures have such a difficulty, because it's already hard enough, I think, to climb up one pyramid, but to actually make the leap from one to another without even knowing there's another in the first place, that's actually pretty hard. Because if you look at affiliation, admiration, status, that's all the stuff my dad and mom talked to me about. Right? To be a doctor and be affiliated with all the other doctors out there, get us honor in the family, which is admiration, right? And become respected with your peers, actually not even my peers and their peers, right? And so I was like, all right, but then I learned this, and I'm like, what the hell is this? What is this belonging and esteem? I don't know what that means. So never mind the self-actualization. So I think that's one of the hardest things that a lot of Asians have to constantly face, especially when you're a kid growing up in two different worlds, what you are taught out here and what you are expected to grow up to here inside. I think it's really difficult. Did you yourself ever go through this, or were you more or less one of the lucky Asians that had to go through this side?
So I think my parents were pretty westernized, but I grew up in a predominantly Asian community in Queens, New York, and I think it's just natural, coming, maybe also just being an immigrant, right? Sometimes people have different needs as well, so.
Do you think that it's hard for an entire generation to be able to, I think it's already hard for one generation to move here, but for you to be able to convince your parents that this is actually what you want to live and how you actually can basically thrive as a person. Is that something that you found a lot of your peers had to go through?
I think, just from the conversations today, even what Amy was saying about, raising her kids, I think every family's dynamic is going to be different. But I think I noticed a mixed bag with my friends.
That's really good. So we worked through this, and you actually came down with some really good tips on how to step by step bring this into a much more digestible form, right?
Yeah.
Sydney?
Yeah, so
Thank you.
for my last slide, I just wanted to share some tips if people are interested in pursuing self-actualization. So the first one is to retain childlike curiosity, right? So I think that the things that resonated with you as a young kid probably resonated with you for a reason. And if they still spark joy in you, to honor that, make space for that. The second one is to identify what's holding you back and confront them. The third one is to try new things, step out of your comfort zone. It doesn't have to be a career change like me, but maybe just taking a new class or learning a new language or doing a pageant. The fourth is to listen to yourself rather than external voices. I think in the Asian American space, there's so much outside noise from your parents and your peers, and even entire industries where you just don't see a lot of Asians, and maybe that kind of scares us, right? And then the last one is to do the work and take responsibility of your life. Yeah, you can think about it all you want, but if you're not actually taking the steps, it's kind of pointless.
Yeah, doing the work and being responsible for your life, that's probably the easiest out of the four, because that you don't know whether or not you're doing the work that you want in the first place, right? Especially if you're going down the wrong path. But I think the first three is why a lot of people struggle with trying to maintain your curiosity, because in many Asian cultures that can be killed pretty much by the age of 2. And then identify what's holding you back. I think that's really hard.
Yeah, it's more
right?
psychological.
Right, because you don't even want to admit that there's anything holding you back in the first place. And I think if you're trying new things, think about out of your comfort zone. That's probably one of the hardest things to do, because that's your safety and your security, which is what a lot of Asian countries build on: is security, success, and safety, right? And if you step out of your comfort zone, that by definition goes against everything you've been taught. So I think it's one of the biggest things that these are great. Did you find any techniques to help you with this as you were going through your journey?
I think that after years of being in a career that I was miserable in, it was like smacking me in the face. And I had done the work on the side, and so, it wasn't just, one day I woke up and decided to switch careers, but I felt like I kind of made the appropriate steps, and I'm applied to grad school, which I think is another, appropriate step. So.
Yeah, same here too. The whole medical school thing,
Right.
changed careers, tried it, did everything I could. Nope, mom. Promised I'd be a doctor, didn't promise I'd stay a doctor. All right, so do you have any piece of advice for any of the young girls, a lot of daughters, sisters, and applicants here, about how things like a pageant transformed you to help you also give you the strength to really just pursue your dream?
Well, I think we were just talking about this backstage, but you, I think, are a really inspiring voice for all the girls, and kind of just encouraging us that, you really can do it, and not to be afraid. The possibilities are endless, so I think just being in that community where everyone is, everyone believes that things are possible. It's not just you, but everyone, I think, part of the team has that sort of mentality, and they're not really limited by these sort of restrictive beliefs. So. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming all the way up from New York.
Thank you,
Alexis.
Francis.
Appreciate it.
Francis, not Franklin.
Thank you.